Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of 1000 Gurus with me, your host, J.R. Yonocruz. Today's episode features Kenta Thomas Naoi. Kenta is a multimodal creative researcher, integrative business coach, designer, embodied inquiry practitioner, and facilitator, bog person, and level 4 animist, druid world builder. His work often centers the body as location for insights, play, and possibilities for more loving futures. He runs Movement Design Research, a project in making and moving sustainably. He also runs Studio Rana, a movement studio with his wife, and he talks to cats. So if that bio did not make sense to you, don't worry. I think it was intentional because Kenta is just like that. He's quirky. So we'll get it. You'll figure it out when you listen to the episode. But I absolutely love this recording. This was a long time coming, but unfortunately the reality of two busy adults who live on opposite sides of the world makes scheduling difficult. But I think challenges like that really make it more special when it does happen, and it makes you cherish the time more. It was great and really grounding to reconnect with a friend who knew you in your formative years, like throughout high school, and I was excited to just see what he's been up to for the last 15 years or so. We reminisce about our high school dance days, our overall impressions of each other before we became adults, his career journey across the country and to Europe, as well as his hard-earned lessons in entrepreneurship and being self-employed. Then also, we talk about leaning into his strengths and his desire to collaborate on and build creative projects. And lastly, we also talk about lessons on joyful movement and non-attachment. I really enjoyed this episode. Definitely gonna listen to it again over and over. Hopefully you guys do too. So without further ado, please enjoy this episode with Kenta Thomas Naoi. Hello and welcome back to 1000 Gurus. Kenta, welcome to the show.
Hi. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here, man. I'll insert post-production applause, so just FYI. There's a ton of people cheering for you right now.
Beautiful. I love it. I'm basking in the glory of me.
Yeah, I've been keeping them on edge for the last 20 minutes, waiting for you to come on stage. Cool. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. You're joining us all the way from Denmark, right? Is it Copenhagen or are you somewhere else?
I'm right outside of Aarhus now, but I do live in Copenhagen. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know where that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. Yeah, we'll get into all that, but I would have already read your bio, so thank you for that. Hopefully the audience can deconstruct that because I'm also curious to deconstruct that. And so I guess I'll go into how I know you. So we go way back. We're from high school days. We were both in hip hop club at Irvington High School. We both worked at Great America. I remember that was very formative for me because that was like some of our first few jobs, and we would go and perform at the parade and stuff like that. And tangent, all of our coworkers were so talented. Do you remember that? I remember being like, dude, I'm not even a dancer or a singer compared to these people. I'm like, they're so good. They were like professional singers and dancers. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Yeah, we would drive around. I would drive us, and that was like when I was first starting to learn how to drive, and then we would drive back at night on the freeway. And I think since then, I was like, oh yeah, driving's easy because I would do this all the time with my friend. You were in gymnastics too, right? I know we did.
I was,
together.
But I didn't. Yeah, I didn't compete though.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
I think
that's what I thought.
high school I was doing one too many things, so. Yeah.
No, not at all. Kenta was like he did everything. Cause were you in ASB? I'm trying to piece together everything.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, not all the years, but like towards the end, I think I was doing ASB and doing theater.
Drama?
I was in like a bunch of different clubs. Yeah, a bunch of different clubs. I was technically in the tennis team, which like if anybody on that team is listening, I'm sincerely sorry because I was very, very absent. And I can actually also tell a story a little bit about that as well. But yeah, so I was just doing one too many things, to be honest. But I think I was just always been a very curious person. And so I just wanted to try a lot of things, Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like a lot of my guests on the show are just like this archetype of they just like to try new things and learn stuff. So you fit right in.
Yeah.
Let's see. So yeah, high school, hip hop dance, gymnastics, b-boying, tricking. You did a lot of different things. Wei Lu, who was a previous guest on the show, was also, he name dropped you, and that was like part of the sort of catalyst for asking you on the show because we were fourth years when he was a first year, and he was also kind of doing theater a little bit or stage, and then he started to get into dance like hip hop and popping and isolations, and now he's been dancing he's a crazy dancer.
Yeah, he's awesome.
And yeah, no, he's great. And, he still lives in Fremont, or we moved back there. And so hometown, right? We're not there, but he's still back there holding it down.
Yeah.
Let's see. So I think that's the gist of it. Anything I left out, or what else have you been up to? I know you're all around. You're Mr. Worldwide.
Yeah. I mean, do I just kind of get into it?
Go for it. Yeah.
It's a bit, we haven't talked to each other really in like 7 years since our 10-year anniversary and high school anniversary. So there's a lot here when I always feel like when you haven't seen people and they're like, how's it going? It's like, ooh, well,
how deep you want to go?
Yeah. I moved to 2 different countries, But yeah, I just wanted to first say, thanks again for having me. And I very fondly remember our friendship in high school, because even though I tried a lot of different things and there were a lot of different experiences that I was a part of, I think like the core of my high school experience really started with dancing with, I forget his last name now, but it was like Josh. There was like a small group I was part of with Josh. And then, oh man, I hope that if they hear it, I'm sorry, I forgot your names now. But it was like from there, I met your sister. And then like you, and then, oh man, I'm really bad with names now. Catherine? No. Who was the person who always danced with your sister?
Oh, Karen?
Yeah, Karen.
Karen,
Yeah. And I feel like that was such a big part of like how my high school started. So yeah, I think you were like very much like there from the beginning of that kind of like seed into something that has really carried me all the way into my adulthood, which is dance, which is not just the dance and the art, but the culture of hip hop. And yeah, and just kind of like the impact and like working at Great America and stuff like that together. And yeah, but I think, so I don't know, like basically in short, I guess because I guess we'll get into it here, is what have I been up to? Is I graduated high school. I went to school for design. I wanted to go to school for film, but it was like going to take too long to graduate. And I was like really over college. So I was just like, what can I take to graduate early? And I've always wanted to build my own businesses and do my own thing, especially like creative businesses. And a part of it was because I've always been somebody who's valued and just couldn't really help myself from pursuing creative routes of expression, and firmly believe that's kind of my way of contributing to the world. And at the same time, it was like a very stubborn thing. We'll go, I guess it's part of the topics for later, but just people telling me like, oh, there's no place for Asian Americans in the film industry. You're never going to make it as a creative, And there was this like part of me that wanted to kind of be like, can I cuss on this?
Yeah, go for it.
It's adult friendly. Yeah, I was like, fuck you, man. Like, I just like, I'm going to make this work, right? I wanted to prove. There's a lot of proving energy, I think, when you're younger, right? So yeah, I mean, so design for me just fit because it was such a skill set that I needed to have for building like a clothing company, which is what at that time was like, that's how I was thinking. I was thinking like I do a clothing company and then use the clothing company to fund other artists. That was my plan. And that's where Creators Unlocked, one of my very first ventures happened, which I think then started Creators University, which was like a club at our high school at one point, I think. And yeah, and then from there I started a bunch of different mini ventures. Like I started a magazine company. I worked at an art gallery for a little bit, so on and so forth. That took me to New York. And then in New York, it was just like so difficult to try and build my business. I'm just giving you the quick highlights. And I was starting to like try to create my own creative agency, and I was super young. I didn't really know what I was doing. Instagram and YouTube and all the stuff that we have now was not around in the same capacity. And so I did my best, but like at the end of the day, I needed to pay rent. So I ended up working for a startup for a little bit. And then after that, I've just been like working for myself. Like I started a creative agency and just did that until I burnt out, and I left New York, and then I moved to Germany. And then my life kind of changed from there. And like in New York, I also met my wife. So there was just now a wife. So yeah, I don't know. It's so hard to try to keep like your entire life in cohesion. But yeah, in Germany, I started to do coaching, like business coaching, which was a nice jump for me from doing like creative strategy work, because I was basically already doing consulting for small businesses through my agency, or like through my studio. So the business coaching kind of gave me a way to like work more personally with the founders, because I realized at that time that my interest was getting to speak to people and helping people navigate like the emotional and energetic turmoil. Because I think when I speak to people, most people are smart enough to come up with a strategy or two of like how to build a business. So the question is always like, why don't you do it? Right. And so getting to work with that like block was kind of my entrance into coaching, because I got a coach. Like when I left New York, I hired a coach because I was like, what the fuck am I doing? I'm so burnt out. I don't want to go back to that. Even though I love doing creative work, I don't want to do it in that way again. Yeah. And then eventually, and then COVID happened, and then we moved back to Denmark to be closer to family. And my wife is from Denmark. So yeah, man, I've just been here. I'm learning Danish. I'm trying to integrate. Yeah. And right now I'm kind of in a little bit of another transition period of what I'm puzzling together in terms of my creative career, which is why it took me a little while to get back to you, because I was like so in the zone of figuring out what that was. It just felt weird to come on and talk to you when I was like really, really in the depth of trying to figure out and organize my own thoughts about what it is that I'm doing now. So
yeah. I like it.
That was
So
a little long.
like
That was a little long, but yeah.
No, that's perfect.
Yeah.
It's like a reflection question, and you're like, oh, crap, I need to do some reflection now and kind of hone it in a little bit so I can cohesively speak on something, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It wasn't like integrated enough for me to come on and chat with you about it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Man, there's so many jumping off points and questions I have just based on what you were saying. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. How did that, okay, I can make an assumption that's what happened.
Yeah.
But anyways, okay. I would like to, and I think we'll get into a lot of that. We have a lot of structured questions to make sure we check those boxes of what you mentioned. But I wanted to jump off with, okay, well, let's reminisce. My favorite part of this. So anything from high school or our sort of growing up days that you remember, fun, interesting, weird, unique stories. And then the second part of that would be like the question that you prompted before the recording, which is like our experiences of each other, how we've seen each other or changed or whatever, and how it is now and how it's evolved through our perception of each other through social media. I think that'd be interesting. But any good stories that pop out to you in your mind?
I think they're combined. I mean, I think the stories I'll tell, they're probably going to be mostly around us, but you've come up to in my mind a couple of times through my life the last many years, is because as you would say something that would annoy the crap out of me and maybe some other people, but it's just stuck with me, which was
in high school.
Which maybe you still do to yourself and others, which is you would always go, no, with that attitude, right?
I haven't stopped.
Yeah. And I think that's such a great advice. And I think like, of course, when you're younger, when you're in a place where you just kind of need somebody to empathize with your experience, it's like can be annoying because you're like, I don't need that.
Just
I need you to be like,
just love me.
Yeah.
Accept me as I am.
But it's so true, right? Like even now I'm in the process of trying to piece together all these different branches of like businesses that I've been seeding through the years, which like did well and then like kind of, I don't want to say collapsed, but pulled back a lot the last couple of years because I needed to figure out how it all aligns with like my worldview. I mean, we're in a very politically and worldly tumultuous time, and I'm very sensitive to that. I think a big part of my values is how do I participate actively in creating more loving futures, and loving not as in like the romantic emotional loving, but like in the ways that we can care for each other even if we don't always like each other, and so I'm thinking a lot about that. So I pulled back. Anyways, now I'm coming back in trying to figure out how all these things fit together. There's like these old voices in my head, right? Speaking of, I used to do a lot of things in high school, and I think a lot of well-meaning adults and maybe some frustrated peers will always be like, you're doing too much. Or I always felt like I was too much for people, that I was kind of like wrong for being kind of like the crazy crazy Kenta. I didn't have long hair back then, but this was like trying to sprout back then. You know what I mean? And and it took a lot of years to be like, no, that's who you are. It's okay. That's your gift. Your gift is like the gift of gab. You talk a lot. You have a lot of ideas. You're so curious. You do a lot of things. They don't always go everywhere. Somewhere in the socially acceptable, successful way, but you're pursuing things, you're creating things. And so I have these like voices that come in sometimes and, they'll say that same thing. And I'd be like, yeah, but I can't do it with this attitude. I'd be like, not with that attitude. I can't. Like if I'm like really starting to embody the critiques that I've been given by well-meaning or maybe not so well-meaning people in my past life, I'm not going to be able to get to where I want to be. And there's only one way to get there is just to try. There's no guarantee, but I can try, So it's a little bit long-winded, but I think a really fond memory is just like you being like, not with that attitude. And then it's still like, that's still with me, like you were my first life coach, man.
We did it. Now, I've had so many of those experiences too, where it's like someone said something and I have not forgotten it for the last 10, 20 years. So you never know what you say that could stick. And I still say that too. I still annoy everyone, older, younger, same age. I would say, not with that attitude. They're like, okay, sure, whatever.
Yeah, but
But
like, look
yeah.
how far you've come, Like, I respect that.
And I think it's interesting because maybe I'm getting this wrong, but you mentioned when you were doing like business coaching, I think you mentioned that they would have strategy, but kind of why aren't you executing on it? Is that kind of the similar sort of vibe? Is they have this thing that they want to do, but something's holding them back and you're kind of just there to nudge them forward?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, with my business coaching, I think it's different for different people. Obviously, not everybody comes to me with the exact same
Sure.
challenges. But the reason why I call myself an integral or integrative coach is because there's a big part of me that thought about maybe going back and being a therapist. I really like talking to people, helping people through kind of the spiritual, emotional, mental navigation of human experience. And the reason, of course, I didn't do that is psychologists and therapists deal with mental health. And I'm more interested in kind of helping people get from point A to point B, which is a bit more of a coaching or like a counseling kind of thing. Yeah. And so some people, they really just like, I don't know. Like, I don't know how to do it. So there's like strategy and there's experience that comes in, and it's more like a mentorship where I'm like, okay, well, this is what I would do, or this is what I did to get these clients, or like to get this through. But I think a lot of people are like, also on the other hand, are like, they say, I don't know, but it's not, I don't know. It's, I don't trust myself to know. I have ideas, but I don't trust myself to say this is a true thing I can try for myself, And so there's a lot of that navigation that needs to happen to get them to, yeah, I mean, a lot of times like to trust and believe, and to heal from some of those like voices, some of those like narratives that they've inherited at different stages of their life and kind of started to embody. And some of it is, of course, also structural, like it is how our systems are set up unfairly for certain types of people and stuff like that, So it's also about how do we build resilience? How do we not accept those things as like the way things are, but as we move towards like changing some of those political or like social structures, like how can we, not with that attitude, right? Like how can we have a little bit more of a like I will still do my best to navigate even if it's really hard, and it is hard, harder for me than maybe somebody with other privileges, for example. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question, but those are kind of just like things.
Yeah, you did. And I would love to, we'll probably pick this back up later on because I'd love to pick your brain on the coaching side of it because I'm also fascinated with the coaching. I do coaching as well. And it's for the exact same reasons I feel like is understanding the psychology of getting someone in particular from A to B, but it's not always just cookie cutter, one size fits all. It is understanding people's motivations and how, for me, it's reverse engineering. How have you in particular personally created success or achieved something and seeing how we can reverse engineer those elements of success and then transfer that to what you're trying to do now instead of just saying, oh, here's what most people do. They just do A, B, and C and then they're done, right?
Yeah.
But we can get back to that. I was going to go back to my conception of you from high school. And I know we mentioned the whole working at Great America and you were doing so many different things. If I were to give an analogy in high school, you're like this ball of energy that no one could really like pin down because you're always doing so many things and you just had all this like vibrancy to you. And so it's okay, I might show up to this club thing or he might be doing 10 other things and you're always just either at home and then you're back here and then it's, oh, here's Kenta. So it's like it's a nice surprise to see you, but it's always understood that you were doing 10 other things and had all this energy that no one could hold you down. So it's cool to see that in plus 15 or so years, that's still maintained the same sort of vibe.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think it's very healing also to reconnect with people in your past, right? Because I do think, like I said earlier, it was a lot of things that I had to work through, which was like the shame that I carried around not being reliable, not being focused, things that I think in the way that I grew up, at least. So I can't just say our culture, but like in the way that the culture around me was very much about do one thing, do really good at that one thing, and become a master kind of thing, right? And also like reliability and all of that, it really came down to like, pick one thing, don't do it, So the fact that I've always just been such a ping pong, because that's just the way I function. Yeah, I think there was a lot of like shame. Oh, I let people down or people don't take me seriously or, which could have been true. I mean, you say this now as an adult. At that time, there could have been times that are frustrating when somebody doesn't show up to certain things, So I take accountability for that now. And also it's, of course, it's nice to be like, cool. Like I wasn't seen in the way that maybe the harder parts of myself that judges myself had believed that, oh, these people think I'm XYZ, Yeah, man. No, I appreciate that. And yeah, I think I'm still very much that. I'm just learning to embrace it and channel it in a, as you get older, like we talked about earlier, like you start to build systems, you start to know how to ask for help, like whether it's a therapist or coach, or like when you build a business, you get to a point where maybe you can start hiring people to help you, or just accept the limitations of, yeah, you're not going to be a master at one thing. You're going to, be really good at a bunch of things, but you're going to be really great at how these things come together. Like that's the skill set, it's not all the things, but like, yeah. So yeah, man, but I wanted to reflect how like my perception of you also, just to kind of give back. Like I said earlier, I really felt that you were, I said this word meticulous earlier, and I'm not sure how I can like point it exactly to things that you were doing in high school, but you've always been very like, do you know what your Briggs? Are you like an ENTJ or like, are you a,
you spot on. I am TJ, but I'm ENTJ in leadership positions.
Yeah. So that's what you learn in coaching. No, I'm just kidding.
No. Hey, props to you, man. I was about to ask you what yours was, and you got mine like spot on.
No, it's because I actually found that I thrive, that a lot of my good friends are. My brother is like an INTJ, and like I find that a lot of my good companions, I do well because like you tend to be a little bit more like organized and like you're very like, you're very, like very meticulous, and it's cool to see that you have kind of continued that throughout your life, like through the choreography and the groups that you've done. Like I get to see your K-pop groups and I get to see these little like funny videos that you pop out. And then I just love that. Like you're just my impression of you even now is like someone who's like, if I set my mind to it, like I'm going to create a schedule and I'm going to come back to it. And I'm just going to like slowly but surely get better at it. And I'm going to be able to do like volumes of that, and my disposition is not always like that. So when I have people around me like that, it really inspires me. Like that's how my wife is too. Like it's like if she sets a goal to do something, she'll be like, these 2 days are for this. And every week she'll like, basically she just won't get sick because she's just like, her body's like, I'm going to be there to do that at this time,
Yeah.
And I'm not always like that. So
what's your Myers-Briggs?
Do you want to take a guess? I don't know how much you know about Myers-Briggs. I'm not a big Myers-Briggs person, so it's not
No, I know about it, but I don't think I'm good at diagnosing unless I really sit down and be like, okay, what is the N and the F and the E again? But if you're complimentary to me, I'm assuming it's more of like, no, I'm not going to try to take a guess. It's going to be messy.
It's okay. I will. So actually, it's funny. Like I tested an ENFP. When I was in the US, but since moving out of the US, I'm an INFP. Like I'm introverted more.
Okay.
I think it's just because the US brings out more of that. Like when I talk to people, it's more. But yeah, I'm a feeler.
That checks out.
Yeah. So it's kind of like I'm very much like I'm an intuitive feeler. I just kind of sense, I vibe through my life. I'm like, should I do that? That feels kind of cool. Like. Yeah. So
I think when I was going down a YouTube rabbit hole, and I think two of the types of personalities that I complement well with are ENTPs and ENFPs, I think, because of the same sort of reasons of we can but our line of reasoning is the same, but obviously we're more feeling versus thinking or judging and sensing and stuff like that. And then the I and the F the I and the E can be either or, but yeah, I think that checks out. Like that makes sense to me. Yeah. Going back, you made me think of this one thing where, so I guess you moving to New York made a lot of sense to me. I'm like, oh yeah, that checks out. Kenta is very like all over the place, meaning like with your ambitions and like you kind of go with the flow vibe, but also you kind of just follow your heart and go for it. But also I think going back to high school now, I feel like my conception of you is that Kenta was always a niche of one. So if you can conceptualize high school and like there's these groups of people with certain, not labels, but categories or interests. It's like, okay, these are the, I don't know, drama people, or these are the, the nerds or whatever. And these are the athletes, right? You were always just a party of one of, you could be in all those groups, but there was no one to compare you to in the best possible way. Meaning like, I wouldn't say, oh, Kenta is just the tennis person. I'm like, no, Kenta is just an entity that is in all these different spaces. And what I admired that about you, but also the fact of going back to superficial, I remember you training handstands, and then when you got it, and then my sister was like, "Oh my God, Kenta getting handstands," and I'm like, "Dang, that's so cool! One day I'm gonna be able to do handstand like Kenta." That was one of those things I was like, That's what I remember a lot about because I was like partially like proud, but also envious. I'm like, shoot, I want to do a handstand. But I learned flips and stuff. And I think b-boying, were there a lot of other b-boys at our school? Because in my brain, you were like the only one, so that also solidified you as a single entity, like not as a part of a group.
Yeah, at least our years, there wasn't a lot of b-boys. That's right.
So you were like really in my brain a pioneer. Like you were just the one, and then eventually other b-boys from other schools. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, they started to come and go over, and like I'm still friends with them too. A good amount of them. But yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think like one of the things that people may not know is that I felt pretty lonely in high school, actually. And so I think that's also why, I don't know, even though we weren't like always hanging out together and stuff like that, and I definitely had like my groups where like I'd go and hang out with the theater kids and stuff, just because proximity of like we're spending so much time making a production together and then we hang out. But I don't know, man, it's kind of weird to say, and this is not to take away from any of my relationships with other people in high school, but you were kind of the real ones for me. Because I think you were also just like, you were just kind of there, and then you just like say it like it is, but like not in like a mean way. I think at that time I would be annoyed or like I might have gotten hurt, but I feel like you've always just been very like lovingly honest. And I think like maybe when you were younger, the nuance or like the articulation of that, like what might have not been there, but I can even tell now the fact that you go into coaching, the way you talk in the podcasts that I've listened to, like you have a very like loving honesty about you, So yeah.
Oh, I see.
Also, I appreciate that. And then I think that's also why I've like tried to kind of keep in touch with you, because I was like, okay, this guy's one of the real ones for me.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Anything else on anything that stands out in high school, whether experiences, stories, or impressions? I'm curious.
Oh man, I think I just really enjoyed like dancing and kicking it with you and your sister, and just getting to be a part of those experiences. And it's just cool to get to see who you are now. Cause like we talked about earlier, like there's a lot of things that for both of us, it sounds like, but like for me to you, like just a lot of things where I'm like, it's like you were always very you. And then it just kind of, it just got like sharpened. The edge kept going.
Yes. Yeah. That makes sense. I think likewise as well. I'm like, I think I mentioned a lot of my guests who I've caught up with, I haven't seen them in years. It's like, you're the same in the best possible way, which is great. It's very refreshing, and it's nice to see that people are genuinely still this, unlike in lieu of some sort of traumatic event and they're changed, right? I'm glad to see that a lot of my friends are like very much the same as I remember them. It's really cool. All right. So then we can move on to the first actual topic then, and we can go back and forth. I know this is usually like me asking questions, but if you have anything that comes up, feel free to ask. But I want to humanize you a bit, get your origin story, life aspirations, career journey, etc. So this is a big chunky one. We'll see where it goes. But first question, like, where did you grow up? What were your biggest influences?
Where did I grow up? I grew up in Fremont with you. My biggest influences, I think I was always very athletic. In that I played a lot of sports growing up. And so I always thought I would be like a sports player. But this is, I think, what I meant about the tennis thing earlier, that maybe not a lot of people know, is like right before high school, I think, I got sick. And I got diagnosed with something called transverse myelitis. And so I actually lost my mobility. So I had to learn how to walk again, basically. And it's part of my origin story that not a lot of people know about. But it was like, it just happened during the summer. And so when I came back, and there was a lot of expectations for me to play tennis because I was playing competitively before, like I just never picked up my tennis racket the same way again, And so, but it was because of that I got into theater. And because I couldn't play, and I just lost my edge, my ambition to play sports in the same way. So I think through that, then came a lot of my ambitions for wanting to like tell human stories. Like I became really obsessed with ideas. I was like, my purpose in life is to help people feel human again, right? Which is in some way like still true to this day, just in different ways. So I don't know if I can name like specific people, but I was very inspired by the storycraft, like the world of story crafting, and whether that's through dance or maybe becoming a filmmaker or theater or whatever that might be. And then especially with dance, like then I think with dance, then there was like people like, of course, like my mentor, like Sean Evaristo. I mean, not sorry. Yes, Sean Evaristo now also, but Justin Escoto. And then of course, Sean Evaristo, because in the Bay Area and like the company and all that. Yeah. And I think especially those are big influences for me, especially when Sean started Movement Lifestyle. And I was kind of like, oh, right, you can do this dance thing, but then you can give opportunities to other creatives. And so then it became more about like, how do I leverage what I can do to like help the community at large through my skill set? Yeah. And then later on, I think a big influence of mine was in college. I got introduced to Bill T. Jones, who's a Black gay choreographer from New York. And he had a piece called Still Here. And in order to create, it was about AIDS, or it was about terminal illness, but he had HIV, AIDS, and his partner passed away, if I'm remembering all of it correctly. And so he created a piece using movement therapy, essentially what might be considered movement therapy these days. And that just moved me. And I was just like, I want to do that. I want to move people to heal, like literally move people to heal. So yeah. So your question was, what's the inspirations, right? That shape me. So I think like I could probably name a bunch of other like creatives and different people, but because there are a lot of people, I think I'm very thankful. And and I have like teacher friends too, just Maya Stewart and Shiloh Burden and Miss Jackson and stuff like that. Like so many people in my life shaped who I am today, so it really is. I'm a firm believer that it takes a village. Like we are a village, like we are an embodiment of a village raising us, so yeah, man, I'm grateful. I'm really grateful for all the different people, even if some of it hurt.
Of course.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay. So growing up, Bay Area, a lot of movement-based things. You had your mobility taken away. You kind of were getting that back. You were inspired by all these creatives and you felt that connection of movements and humanity and life. Could you connect the dots from, okay, so now high school Kenta, who I knew a lot, now going into college, San Francisco State University. If I'm not getting any of this wrong, you mentioned design, BS in visual communication design, if that's accurate, new media emphasis, and then eventually moving to New York. Could you connect the dots for us?
Yeah. So connect the dots between high school to college to New York?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So
if there are any like major themes that stick out to you, you're like, okay, here's the biggest current that brought me that direction.
Yeah, I think it was about how do I make the world a better place? I mean, that's such a broad term, right? And it's different for everybody. But I think especially at a young age, like without being able to like fully understand what that really even means for me. I mean, even now at this age, it's like I'm still kind of figuring out because it changes. But I think it was like, how do I make the world a better place through the craft that I keep getting pulled towards, which is creative crafts, creative storytelling. So that took me to San Francisco State, which had a pretty good film department. So I went to do film. I was originally going to major in film. I thought I wanted to be a director and an actor. And then because of, we are children of the 2008 financial crisis. And I mean, it's like, feels like a whole repeat now again. But, I think this life just felt really uncertain. Like the future felt really uncertain. I didn't really know, like, I didn't have a lot of trust in our government systems and like our financial systems. And I really felt like the best thing to do was to start my own business. I thought it was going to give me the most sovereignty over my creative aspirations and what I can do with it. And so, yeah, I was just like, I want to just not go to college anymore. And I just want to start my own business. And then I had some really well-meaning, like older friends, as we do when we're in the dance community, because we get to dance with older folks. And, they're like, dude, don't drop out of college. Just finish college. So I was like, okay, how do I finish college as fast as possible? So I found design. And I graduated in 3.5 years, which is like, in retrospect, like not that much faster, but like the trajectory was 5 to 6 years because our program was so impacted in film. So I was like that, I did that. And then during that time, I like started my projects Creators Unlocked, which was like, basically it was a blog and a clothing brand and a community like incubator, let's say. So I would try to like put on other creatives. Like I try to put like events together and then we sell the clothing. And yeah, and then I think hip hop was a big part of that. Like coming from the Bay Area, like I think the Bay Area is so rich with activist history, and then like hip hop being like such culturally intertwined with activism and community work. I felt really lucky getting to live in SF because a lot of that was, like that, like they like really intertwined. It really gave me a lot of information about how to use creative work as a change making pathway. And then after college, Creators Unlocked shut down, as because I didn't really know. I was just like doing whatever I can at that age, like build businesses. And that kind of evolved into a couple other projects, which was still about media, so it was just like the name changed, and like I brought on some partners, like some friends who were going to help me. And then with those two partners, the three of us, we went to New York to do an interview with some people that are like in the industry, in the creative industry that we respected. And then they floated the idea like, why don't you come move to New York? It's like, this is the Mecca. And I've always wanted to move to New York. Actually, I've always wanted to move to Europe, but I was like, okay, maybe New York could be a good post until I figure out how to move to Europe. And then so that summer we're just like, yo, let's do it. That's where everything is. We got to be where all the creatives are. So we packed our bags and moved there, and we crashed with our friend who was part of the co-founder, but he had a full-time job. So in retrospect, I mean, it's so crazy. We were just so resourceful, and I feel a little bit bad because he took on the brunt of the housing because like he was able to get relocated through his full-time job, and we were just like couch crashing at his place. Yeah, man, we're just scrappy. And then we got to New York. We finally moved into our own apartment. We tried to build that business up. We found that it's very, very difficult to be taken seriously at that young age. Again, we didn't have Instagram. We just don't have the same outlets. A lot of it is show your work, prove it, like walk around New York, talk to people, build those connections, pass your portfolio around. And I mean, I was just going into debt at that point. So I was just like, I need a full-time job. And so I reluctantly applied for a few jobs at startups, and I received a position as a designer at an early stage startup. And so that kind of started to break. That was like how that second business kind of came to a close. And so like we all kind of went separate ways, the three of us. So yeah, that's what took me to New York, man. And then from there, I was just like hustling, I don't really like that word because I think it kind of gets associated with like toxic masculine bro hustle culture, but hustling as in I had to put so much effort in. When I moved to New York, one of my elders, like one of the guys, older people in my life, he was one who also encouraged me to move to New York. He said to me, there's two times when you move to New York. Once when you're really young and you have a lot of energy and you have a big dream. Second time is when you have a lot of money and a lot of time. Everything in the middle, don't do it. Just exhausting.
Interesting.
And I really, really feel that way. So when I moved there in my early 20s, I had a lot of energy and a lot of ambition. So I was just hustling, man. I was like literally like going out to every event, every meetup I can. I was just meeting people. I was just trying to make friends. Like I was like paying my rent on my credit card. At one point, I was eating rice and beans, and I joined TaskRabbit, and I was also a gardener, like a landscaper. So I would just wake up at 4 a.m. I would walk downstairs, take the train, get off. A white van would be waiting for me. I would hop into the back of a white van with a bunch of stacks of sand, and I'd be literally like going to rich people's homes, like laying out sand on their backyard for like landscaping. And then I'd go and clean people's bathrooms. And then I'd go home and try to get cleaned up, go to meetups. And then slowly I'd get one client do a website for me for $200. I was like, yeah, fuck it, whatever, like $200, I'll do it. Like it's groceries. And then, yeah, man. And that kind of continued until like I started to build my portfolio, build the connection. And then it's always what I found is like, it only takes one or two people who are willing to take a chance on you, who are willing to connect you with other people. And so I think that's also why I'm such a believer that like success is not just, like I just become successful. You got to be lucky. Like luck is a part of it, I think. And also, yes, tenacity and effort and all that, of course, is a part of it, right? But it's just for me, it's like you got to stay humble because there's people who will help, like who are going to help you get where you want to be. It's not just you, you know what I mean? So again, I'm very grateful for the people who were like, you want to come take on some extra work at my studio? And I was like, hell yeah. And then at the end, they were like, hey, do you want the clients I don't want? And I'm like, scraps? I'll take it. I was just like, whatever you don't want, I'll take it. So I was like, in the beginning, I was just doing projects I like didn't really want to do either, but I was like, let's do it. I'll just take it. And then
what kind of clients? Like what projects?
Like websites, logos, branding.
Okay. Like digital sort of stuff.
Yeah. Digital and physical, like print, like packaging, like anything. Like I utilized my design degree to the fullest, you know? And then it also became like content, started shooting, like I started doing media collateral. Obviously, then social media became bigger and bigger and bigger. So brands wanted like anybody who can like create like media collateral and social media posts and, you know, so I just did whatever I can, man. And then during that time, like still trying to figure out like, how do I bring my own creative work forward, you know? And it was a hard like compromise and balance of being like, I want to start my own creative thing where I have full control over it, but I need money. And service businesses are kind of the easiest routes to go to make money on a creative for me, I think, because it's low overhead. You don't need overhead. You just need to convince someone that you can do it. And then they pay you and then you do the work. You know what I mean? So,
right.
Yeah, it was a very interesting time, but it was very, very stressful.
Could you place us in time of what years and what age you were for this when you were in New York and you were hustling and doing all this stuff?
Yeah, so it was like 2013, it's like 2014, I think, officially, maybe. Yeah, kind of like on and off 2013, but I think 2014 officially. So I was 22,
23, something.
Yeah, 20. Maybe? Yeah, exactly. 22, 23, something like that. Yeah. And then, yeah, man. So I was just like doing whatever I can. I was so stressed. I was like so much in debt. And yeah, I just like when I took the startup job, I was just like, whatever money I get, I'm just going to pay off my credit card as fast as I can. So I was like, every month I just had zero in my bank account. I was like, everything was just paying off loans and then just living as cheaply as possible.
Yeah. So what were you doing at the startup again? Maybe I missed it.
No, I didn't say. The startup was such a small blip in my life. I'm so shady. Yeah. No, but I was doing design. I got hired as like a UX product, like what would be considered today as like a product designer. But I was doing like XUI. I was helping build the initial launch product for a arts investment startup. So I was like helping build a platform and then coding front end.
Okay. And so from all the hustling and the different sort of odd jobs and then the startup, at what age or stage or year was that? And then what was the next step after that?
Yeah, so that was like 22, 23, right? And I think the startup was like early on in that process. And then after that, I was just like, fuck this. I don't want to work for anybody. I just, again, that stubborn part of me was like, I was like, do you believe in yourself? I was like, yeah. I was like, okay, well, if you believe in yourself, then why don't you just go like 100%? Like you can fucking do this. So there were many nights where I was like, literally, I felt so depressed because I felt so overwhelmed and like constantly had to tell myself like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. Right. And like eating like spaghetti out of a can, basically. It's like not a healthy time for my life, but you can do that when you're 22, 23, right? And like breaking on the side.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so then that was like 23. And then from there, I started like 23, 24. I started to get a few projects, started to build a little bit more of a network of people who like pass me along. And it just took a few people who like ran their own studios or like were also freelancing who are willing to pass like projects onto you that they didn't want to take or could not take because they had too much work. And then from there, I got passed on into like agency rounds. So then there was just a few like people who like worked in agencies who would then just bring me in on freelancers. So then you just kind of like need to know a few people who like know how to get you in the door and get you considered for work. And then and then the more you do it, the more people you meet and obviously the more trust you build. And then people like, even when like certain like project managers will move to another startup or another agency, like if they liked working with you, like you'll get that email. You'd be like, hey, now I'm at so-and-so and so. Could you quote us for a project? Because I would like to work with you again, you know? And so that was like, then, I mean, I don't know exactly, but I guess that was like 23, like 24, 25. Yeah, 26. And then in that process, I met up with a friend of mine who we were like, we always wanted another B-boy. And we were like, yo, let's like start something together. You know, like we should do a business together. And before that, I had started another small media company by myself. I call it a media company. It's like a blog, right? But like a
Sure.
media company, and I ran like a pop-up shop. I rented a space in Williamsburg, and then I like basically did 2 weekend pop-up shop. And I was like, man, I love this. I think I could really dig like running my own store and like creating my own brands and working with people like this. And so I was like, this is all in retrospect. So if you ask me, I might tell a different story at a different time, but I'm just trying to recall how things went. But essentially I was like, okay, I want to do my own thing. So I met up with my friend. We were going to launch like a product. We wanted to build like something that was ours, not where we're doing a service for somebody. And then we were like, okay, well, we don't have any capital. And then it's like, do you want to raise or do you want to, self-fund? It's like, oh, well, I don't want to borrow money. So it's like, we got it in self-fund. And so we started an agency together. And that one did really well. But we were like, it went like 0 to 100 real quick. Like within 8 months, we were doing like close to 6 figures. So like we were really growing that. And then at like month 8, from 8 to the end of the year, we were like looking at each other and we felt so burnt out. We're like, dude, is this what we want to really be doing? We kind of started this to fund our own business, but now we're like locked into doing service work. And if we keep doing this, it'll go well, but it's like impacting our friendship. And number one thing we valued was like our friendship. And during that time, there were opportunities to like help run our own product brands. So we hopped onto that and then we split our ways. And actually my friend is still running his product brand. So I'm like, damn, okay, cool. Like you actually ran with it and built a product brand like the way you wanted to. And I still help him with that brand to this day. But yeah. But that was like towards the end of my New York stint. So then that was like 26, 27. I was so burnt out. And then my wife and I were like, now wife, we were like, we were kind of getting ready to move out of New York because my plan was always to leave. And her plan was, well, she had to move back at some point. So we were kind of like the stars started to align in 2018. And I was like, okay, so I was still, after that agency closed down, I went back to freelancing and just running my own one person studio. And that was like really good actually. Like I was hiring people, like working with my friend taught me more about like how to hire help. And, so like I was the person who could now like pass projects on to people because like I got to that place where now I had too much work and I had to turn people down and I could recommend people. Yeah, sorry, this is getting long-winded, but
no worries.
And then at the end, I was like, yo, what is it that you really want to do? And I was like, dude, I want to run my own product. And I was like, well, what's the thing that you want to do? And it's like, well, I love movement, I love design, and I love research. So it's kind of
combine
funny
those words.
I literally just combined them like movement, design, research. So I started like a design studio called Movement, Design, Research, where I like did a Kickstarter, which was like so stressful. But we were able to raise enough money to like rent space downtown. And I invited a bunch of different artist friends of mine to interpret what movement means to them and build based on their craft, like things like photography or like VR things and projection mapping projects and stuff. And I built a like mini parkour gym inside with my brother where it's like light and sound sensitive. That was like the goal, at least. It was hard to execute it at the end, but like we built this like infrastructure. And then when I moved out of New York, I was like, okay, I want to do this. So it's been many, many years of trying to really spend time building that and kind of fighting myself on whether that should be like a clothing brand. Cause like I've done clothing so many times and it's a hard business for me. But yeah, anyways, like I can keep going on and on and off, but that's what I'm working on today. Is like building that up as a soft goods brand. And then later on, if I want to, I'll build it into other products. But I've just accepted I'm just going to make clothing again for a little while. Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Thank you. Thank you for taking us through that. I had a couple of follow-ups. Yeah. So when you said agency, what do you mean by you had an agency? Is it helping businesses like develop like marketing or business development or?
Correct. Yeah. Like we had like a creative agency where we did ads. We basically just like bottom up. So anything visual identity, branding, website, social media content, digital communication strategy, ad spend.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So lucrative, but burned you out. And then so you kind of pivoted back to freelance work, I assume, in like digital or sort of the similar things.
Exact same
but just
thing, minus the ad spend because that was my friend's thing. Yeah.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
And then now what you've been currently doing for the last several years, what is I get the general idea, but what is like the business model? My nuts and bolts brain is trying to figure this out.
Yeah, it's the INFP, not
Yeah, yeah, of course.
INTJ.
INTJ, yeah.
No, yeah. What am I doing now? Okay. So it's basically the same thing. It's just service work. So since 2019, I hired a coach when I left New York and I moved to Germany because I was burnt out and need to figure out what I wanted to do. And then I was like, I would like to still work with people, but in a different capacity. I'll cut it short there just so I don't go into a full story. But 2020, I started business coaching. So the business model is that I work with people who want to build businesses, whether they are full-time and they would like to go freelancing, or they would like to start their own business, or they're already, unemployed. I don't say unemployed, but like they're now like full-time their idea, or maybe they're already in the business and they're doing well, but they are having a hard time going to the next level, so to speak, right? And yeah, so I mean, the business model is service oriented. So I don't know, that's like the shortest way. Like they pay me for a package, so a certain set of time, either 3 months, 6 months. Often people will renew, or there'll be like a one-off like strategy session or whatever I'm offering at that time because it has changed over the years. Yeah, and then we'll sit together for whatever the time is allotted. Often my packages will also offer like asynchronous support where they can voicemail me or email me, or I'll help them literally like I'll make comments on their pitch decks or whatever that is. So like the idea was originally, it was like a rent a Kenta. It was like, I will be your business partner and coach. Yeah. And then I still do design work from here, like little on the side still. Like I've still continued to freelance as a designer and like creative service work. But my main job is business coaching.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense to me. And I also like the branding of Rent-A-Kenta. I think that's fantastic. So how does so you mentioned like creative movement design. How does that fit in? And then also if you want to throw in Studio Rana, if I'm getting that right, how does that connect?
Yeah. So I think the best way to explain it is like there's the service side of my business, which is where I help other people with their visions. And I think for me, the hard part has always been to jump the bridge or to kind of build a steady bridge over to my own visions where like I'm in full control over my distribution and execution of ideas, right? So there's a part of me that really believes like I need to like practice what I preach. So if I'm a business coach, if I am talking about these things, I want to make sure that I'm still doing business outside of I'm selling you business coaching, and design services. So yeah, I mean, for me, like I said, like you've heard, I don't know if you like caught on, but there's like a theme of like me struggling to do my own creative, like product-based thing. So movement design research is that. It's just taken like a long time to like really put all the pieces in place, also like emotionally and spiritually, to be able to be like, okay, now during the pandemic, I learned how to sew because one of the hangups for me was I didn't want to go into mass manufacturing because it's not sustainable. So I didn't want to go hit up a friend who like has ties to China or like India or Vietnam and get something made because one, it's overhead intensive, and two, I just don't think it's sustainable. So like it took years to learn how to sew. So like I can produce my own samples. And then now as I produce those, I'm going to slowly in the next year or two start to be like, okay, can I really, if I have to make more than 5 products a month, then I'll start to go, and I've already found a few manufacturers in Portugal, and then I'll be like, okay, I'll do small scale manufacturing locally because it's a bit more sustainable, So that's how MDR or movement design research connects. It's like my passion project. And then Studio Rana it's just like a catch-all for what how my wife teaches yoga and she's a physiotherapy student now. And so we've both like really connected on like mental health, spirituality, like really how do we take care of ourselves and take care of our communities. And like movement is like such a centerpiece of that for us. And so we were always like dreaming of opening up our own like physical space, which hasn't happened yet. So like it's like digital and we like rent space still, but it's Studio Rana. This is our logo. And yeah, so right now I was just like, my philosophy is like, if I can't, I got to work with what I have. We don't have the overhead or the capacity to really open our own space yet, but we can do it online and we can rent space and we can already start teaching people. So I have a weekly class. She's been teaching longer than I have consistently. So she's been having weekly classes and she just did her first certification program, teaching a certification. Yeah. And then one day the goal is to have a space where we sell like healthy foods, where it's a cafe and people can come eat healthy and like connect with community. They can come train and move and play. Yeah. And then also have like my clothing there, like walls. So there'll be like a small boutique element. So it's like a little bit of a physical catch-all. Right now I'm just doing it digitally because we haven't quite had the time and energy to invest in opening a space yet.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. I see the vision and I can see how it's connecting all those dots. One thing I want to now take it back to, since you've already taken us through your overall journey, is, I mean, I think biggest challenge is we've kind of checked that box a little bit unless you want to go deeper, but I want to ask greatest lessons learned as you reflect on this whole, winding Kenta journey.
That's a hard one. I feel like there's so many lessons. I think don't be so attached. I think I'm really in a phase of life where I study a lot. I try to be involved in studying a lot of Dharmic traditions. So Dharmic as in, Buddhist, yogic. And then also just looking back at what are our ancestors saying. I think that's also where like martial arts is interesting because martial arts is a preservation of ancestral wisdom through like literally a combative art form, There's a reason for why certain movements are included. And so, but anyways, through all of that, like one of the biggest things is like, how do we practice like non-attachment, not as like apathy or, I don't care or whatever, but non-attachment is seeing things as best as one possibly can for what they are and to not be attached to all the noise around. So that's, like our expectations of how things are supposed to be, judgment that we feel others have on us, whether it's true or not, how we perceive it, try not to be attached to those things. So I think that non-attachment piece like really like parlays into like lessons of patience, lessons of perseverance and endurance, but also just like lessons in allowing yourself to move as smoothly as possible forward in the way that it needs to without needing to try and control everything, because that's actually an illusion.
One thing that you brought up is attachment. And I was having this reflection in the last couple of years, and it's from this book, Awareness by Anthony DeMello. One of the biggest takeaways I got from that book was most, if not all of our pain or suffering is an attachment to something, whether it's a person, an idea, an identity, etc. And if we can learn how to strengthen the muscle of detachment in the spirit of what you're saying, it will reduce that sort of suffering or resistance to pain that we keep experiencing. And that's one of those lessons I've been trying to learn or internalize more is I know when I am upset or in these low points, it's because I'm attached to something that I don't necessarily need to be attached to. In a healthy way, obviously. We want to be attached to our family, our friends, and good things like that. But if it's an expectation that I'm attached to or an outcome that I'm attached to, I find that's the reason why I've been so upset over something and I don't need to be. And so that's it reminded me of what you're saying. I want to ask you if you had any thoughts on that, but I also wanted to ask you as a movement expert, what is something that you could pass on to us about reconnecting with ourselves? Because you mentioned, you keep talking about movement, and I think you mentioned something about connecting with our body and ancestors and culture, like you just said. Anything that you want to share off of that?
Ooh, yeah. Man, podcasts are hard because I also have I would love to hear about your experience with the non-attachment and things like that and what experiences have come around that. But I'll just answer the movement thing. Well, first of all, I wouldn't consider myself a movement expert, but I would say you said lessons around movement.
Yeah, lessons, takeaways, or things that people don't consider as someone who is more immersed in movement and physical movements and whatnot.
Yeah. I think like the thing is like there's so much research about the importance of moving our bodies for our mind and just our general health, especially like my wife studying physiotherapy and having friends who are like, personal trainers or physical therapists or like body workers. I'm just also around like getting to see the the inabilities that come with age and ailment, and just how important health is more than anything. And I think we live in a culture where like people say stuff like, well, I'll sleep when I die, or, it's like people will tend to put their health second to whatever else. And listen, if that's the priority, that's fine. But I just really find also as someone who's been sick in the way that I talked about earlier in this podcast, where I lost my mobility and had to bring it back, like it's really no joke to not have your health. And I just think it's just so important to find a way to move in whatever capacity. And for me, my advice would just be find something that is fun, like move in a joyful way. Because when we find ways to move in joyful way, and I think this is why dance is so powerful, is like we do multiple things. Like one, we connect very like somatically or like very much with our bodies to like a sensorial experience that's like on a harmonic or chemical level, right? I'm not a neuroscientist, but I'm sure there's papers out there about the dopamines and the serotonins. I mean, we know through research that when people exercise, even these chemicals come up and we get this happy, right? The runner's high and all that and stuff like that. So none of you medical people quote me on this, obviously. Don't come for me. But I just think it's so important. Like when we find a way to move through joy, I think it covers a lot of the necessities. Like we move our bodies, and we move our bodies in a way that feels connected to an emotional experience. And so it's like, there's so many things one can say about movement, but I just think just find a way to move. And I think the best way to move is to move in a way that feels fun and playful. And so, because I think a lot of people think of movement as a chore. Like you sit all day, you drive all day, especially in the US, to and fro, to go then do a task like workout. And not everybody loves working out. If you love working out, that's great. But some people is like, that's a chore. I have to go work out. It's like, no, go take a dance class, go swim, go, if you want to twirl around 20 times in the middle of your room, go do that. You know what I mean? Find a way just for fun.
I like that. It reminds me of a lot of, so another book reference, Built to Move is a core philosophy of the health that I've been trying to implement. And it is the same thing you're saying is the cornerstone of health is movement. And if you look at the people who have a lot of longevity, obviously there's a lot of factors in that, but it's the older senior people who are constantly moving, whether they now garden daily or they're just constantly moving around during their day. They're not stagnant and just sitting in one spot. And I think that from what the book was saying, it contributes to their longevity and their health. And so I try to internalize that as well. For me, it's still mostly like a chore. I feel like I do my workouts every 4 times a week. I go to the gym and then I get my 10,000 steps per day as okay, I got to do this. I'm not joyfully walking. I will honestly admit that. I do dance here and there, but not as joyfully. So I'm like, okay, that's good food for thought. I appreciate your insight on that.
Yeah. And just also like, I mean, it's not as you have to have a, orgasmic high every time you do something, right? But I think it's an interesting point, like also as dancers, like sometimes I find that older dancers, they dance out of habit. And I'm like, why'd you start dancing? You know what I mean? Is there something about dance that still brings you joy? And if it doesn't, maybe you need to try another style. Maybe you need to change the expectations of the dance, walking. Maybe it's not walking, but maybe it's like you like to spend time in a specific park. It's very Buddhist, right? It's also about presence. It's like just like being present in the moment and finding something to be grateful for or joyful for, and I don't know. I think it's just something that I often think about is, like it just brings me back into my body, into my present moment, Yeah.
I like that. Here's one thing I'll share in my own dance journey is on your topic of joyfully moving. That's why I've been trying to phase out of my whole K-pop dance era because I don't have any joy when I do K-pop dance. It was started as a fun thing, but now it's so, I'm a director of my K-pop team and it's so like my values are so misaligned with everyone else in the K-pop scene because in my generalization, it's very aesthetic-based sort of dance community where it's all about cosplaying as famous Korean idols, which is fine if that's your thing and makes you happy. But for me, I know it doesn't. Like I could care less about these idols. I could care less about celebrity. I could care less about meeting these people in person. And so I feel very disconnected from the dancers in that community. And so what I've been trying to do in the last year is to reconnect with my freestyle dance roots because I know I'm happier when I dance the way I want to dance, not how someone else is dancing and I'm covering them. And so I'm trying to intentionally go back to my freestyle roots, which is popping And house dance, I want to start learning too, and like whatever groove styles. And what I've been gravitating towards more is like I would tell my girlfriend, can we go clubbing or something? Because I love going to a club and just like that vibe, that scene for me is where I really find my jam, like my joy for dancing. It's not, it's this, maybe you can relate, but it's the space of being in a space where people are there to enjoy the music. I'm obviously a dancer in the minority who actually wants to dance, not necessarily be there for the social aspect. And so I'll be in the corner dancing to this like music and just vibing out. And 2 hours later, 8,000 steps later, I'm like, that was fun. And I just go home. Right. And so I've been trying to force myself to go into these clubbing events for very different reasons than my friends would. And I'm like, man, I need to find a group of people who just want to go to the club just to dance. And I know there are like freestyle sessions that I'm like hit or miss on for various reasons, but I'm like, okay, wedding receptions are my jam, and clubbing events where I'm like only with either myself or some close friends, where I'm moving the way I want to move to the music, is like my jam. So in the spirit of what you're saying, like I think I need to lean more into movement that makes me happy. And I think those things are like what I'm trying to inch towards, if that makes sense.
Oh, I love that. And like you're such a dope dancer, man. And
thank you.
And I just remember so fondly, like some of my most fun dancing experience in high school was like with you and your sister when she was like still there in the corner and us like actually dancing, like actually
likewise, exactly.
And when I first moved
like
to
the
New
only
York,
people at our high school dances that were like dancing like outside of the whole like mosh pit of people like just grinding, and we're like in the back just actually like
actually
hip-hop
trying
dancing,
to dance.
Right?
Yeah,
exactly. That's the same energy I bring to clubs just 20 years later.
Exactly. And I think that's the way it should be. I think for me, when I moved to New York and I got introduced to like house clubbing culture, I was like, that's what it is. It's the place where the community goes, especially like the Black community, the queer communities, to go and release and be in community and be with each other. And it's like a safer space, and dude, I'm all about that. I love that journey for you, like reconnecting with your dance. 'Cause you're a sick dancer. And
thank you.
And I think that's anyways, I'm really happy to hear that.
Yeah, thank you. It's a work in progress, but I hope to get there, because it kind of, as someone who's identified as a dancer basically my entire life, it's that identity crisis of like, why do I not enjoy dancing? And I know it's because I'm not in the space where I need to be with dance. It was fun for the time in that chapter, but now I'm like, okay, if I don't want to suck the joy out of this, let me go back to what I enjoy doing and being intentional with that.
Yeah.
Cool. So, all right. So, sorry, did you have anything else on? I know we have like a jumble of different ideas.
No, I mean, it's not, I'm also trying to be mindful of the time in your podcasts. But I mean, I would also love to hear like how, well, I mean, I'm generally curious like how it's been going for you. Like what,
Sure.
But I'm a little bit like, should we talk about that in the podcast, or should that be another time? But I'm kind of curious like what you've been up to since high school and now. I did like kind of read your blogs. I kind of have like an idea of a little bit of like what you're up to. Yeah. But I'm kind of curious like for you, and then also maybe mix in a little bit of this like these things that you've been thinking about, like especially like the unattachment and like how those things have benefited you, or were there specific instances in your life where those things kind of came up enough where you're like, hey, I need to examine how my relationship to these moments are, like my relationship to attachments are, So it's like kind of like a 3-part question, or kind of, it's like a general but starting point. But I'm just curious like how you've been also.
Sure. Yeah, no, I can give it to you. I do too much reflection, so I can give you a good TLDR of my journey since college. Yeah, I think career-wise, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Majored in poli-sci, UCI, graduated 2013, worked at a law firm, moved into accounting, moved into project management, and now that's what I do professionally, is project management in the tech space, like with software developers. And I think the recurring theme as I try to figure out what my purpose is, what I do for a career, what I do for fun, I've eventually found out through pursuing these doors and trying to do my best is, obviously I'm an INTJ, I'm an optimizer strategist, but what I really enjoy is helping people to, like coaching, getting people to where they want to be. But in my professional space, I help software teams to do that, where to create a good performing team and create and make them a higher performing team through metrics, through strategy, through coaching, through relational processes, but also structured processes like agile and software. And so I've done that for fun in my dance team. I'm like, hey, I'm applying for leadership. And I'm like, you know what you guys are missing? You're missing an internal relations sort of thing where we can focus on team health and culture. Having been in the dance space all of college for like the last 10 years, I know how to make this a safe, conducive space for us to learn and grow and have more feedback-based improvements. And this is what you need. And so I created the job that I got hired for on my dance team. Been doing that for the last 3-4 years. And we completely 180'd the culture. So now it's like a safer space for them to do what they enjoy, which is K-pop dance. And now I'm getting into coaching. I'm pursuing my curiosity with this podcast of I just want to connect with people, share stories, learn for myself, and then share those learnings with other people. And so as I weave together all these curiosities that I've had, and stand-up comedy as an aside. I love doing stand-up comedy.
Love it.
I learned, 101, I learned how to do punchline setup and I do it with a friend. We'd been on and off on it, but I love that. And that's a piece I'll get back to. But essentially it all lines up to this theme of me wanting, I think my purpose or my theme or my label is being a learner, but the other side of learning is teaching. And I only teach or coach or give advice on things that I've done myself. And so as I'm doing my self-experimentation for the last 15 years, it's okay, well, I've gotten to a level of fitness or productivity or personal finance, and I can help my friends do the same thing. And now I'm pursuing making that like an actual official business. And this platform is to also enhance the other side of that, is connect with people, expand my networks and learn from them and share with that in the pursuit of my own knowledge. And so, as I connect the dots, that's what my theme has been, is like, okay, so I am like an optimizer, learner, strategy, reverse engineering success or achievement, but also not avoiding the happiness part of that, because achievement and happiness or fulfillment are different things. And it's always keeping that in the forefront. And then if we go back to attachment, as I've been in this mode of achievement and reverse engineering the science of achievement and wondering why a lot of us, myself included, aren't fulfilled or happy, it's because we're missing that sort of part of fulfillment. Part of it is connection, but also what makes us unhappy is like what we're talking about, attachment and detachment. And I think it's more just the expectation of other people and how they show up and giving them grace for me and my red flags. And I talk about this a lot on the show, is that I have a high standard for myself, and unfairly, I will subconsciously put that on my partner. And that's something I've been trying to actively kind of revert from, because a good partner should always love and accept you as you are and support who you want to be. And so I realize that, but also with friends as well, I kind of have this standard of, if you don't meet my expectations, it makes me suffer because I'm now unhappy because you're not showing up the way that I expect you to. Obviously, that's not what you should do. And I think maybe that's my general adventure, or like a general push and pull with attachment, is because I've been so focused on this sort of achievement and getting from A to B, I also need to realize the humanity of giving other people grace, detaching from expectations on their end. But now I'm in this space of vulnerably, I'm also now feeling very lonely, because I look around and I'm like, why is there no one else doing what I'm doing, or as ambitious, or is as achievement oriented? And not to say people don't do that, but as my pursuit of bringing people I respect and admire on this podcast and seeing what they're doing, and seeing my high volume friends of they're achieving whatever level is happy for them or good for them. And that's fantastic. But for me, being like, how come I feel like I need and I want and I'm craving other high achievers to be with? But I also know that if I bring it back, that's just my own expectation, and I'm unhappy because I'm making myself unhappy. Yeah. Does that make sense? A little bit word vomit.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it's so interesting, because even though, I kind of started off with kind of being like, oh yeah, I have a little chip on my shoulder about, being told that I'm too much and I'm doing a lot of things. But again, it's so cool because you're also doing a lot of things, right? And kind of pursuing it in a little bit of a different way. And I feel very similarly about kind of the teacher-learner role. I think that's ultimately, I kind of would joke that if I still lived in the US, I mean, again, very weird place to live these days, I assume, and want to be this, I was going to say, is I think I would pursue teaching. I think I would love to be a teacher if I was still in the States, because I love to learn and love to teach. But I think I get to do that in a coaching capacity as well. Yeah, and just kind of the play off of, I think that you're kind of meticulous. You keep talking about like reverse engineering, and it's so interesting you use that language. And I often use very like poetic kind of forest nymph language. And one of the ways that I've described myself is I'd call my work like possibilities weaving. And so it's very interesting. It's very similar, but also in a little bit of a different way. And I think that's the beauty of it, is like there's going to be people in the world who really need the way that you process and articulate information back to them. And then there's going to be people who need it a little bit more in the way that I do.
Way.
Yeah, and vice versa. And it's surprising what types of people, right? Like it'd probably be like someone like me might need you the most, because I'm like, I can vibe code in my head, but what I really need, I need someone like you to be like, what the heck is he actually saying? No, but I really love that. And then there was a piece about the non-attachment that I think is really beautiful. I was talking about it with my wife today about, I think the way that and I'm very careful not, like when I make statements, it is a generalization, but it's not the absolute truth, right? But
of course,
like I often find, let me start it that way, that the way we treat others is very similar to the way we treat ourselves and vice versa. And so when we give others grace, I find that we also have the capacity to give ourselves a little bit more grace. When I can allow others to be themselves, I can allow myself to be more me. If I could just let other people be who they are, I can also let myself be who I am. And it's like, wouldn't that be a wonderful world, to be able to live in a world where it's like, I might not like it, but I give you the sovereignty to experience whatever journey you're going through right now. And I will do the same for myself. And I can expect, I know we were kind of talking about expectations, attachment, but I can, if for myself, expect that others will, or accept, let's say, that others will do the same for me, that they will give me the sovereignty and grace to go through my life in the way that I need to right now, based on my experiences and my understanding of the world. So yeah, I really like that. Yeah. But I do really understand also about feeling lonely when, of course, it's like when we're moving towards certain visions, it is helpful to have others who are in a similar place, because it feels good to feel connected with others energetically, right? When they're like, no, I get that. I'm also doing that, or, oh yeah, I love that. I'm also doing 50 bazillion things, And you're like, cool. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Yeah, I think I don't know. Do you have any other questions? The only thing left on my end is the rapid fire questions, which might tie in some of these things, but any other things you want to talk about? Because we can always just move past that.
No, I just want to reflect back that I really, I think one of the things that I've really realized in my life is that you can find ways of integrating like your I put air quotes on this, but like your passion or like your curiosity, and you can like, I think it's very easy for me in my journey at one point to believe that everything has to be one, like you have to do the work that allows you to do, like everything has to be like the thing. And I think that's also why I shied away from some 9-to-5s, because it was like, oh, it's not exactly what I want and I'm not really getting, but I think I also, as I get older, I really have a lot of respect for people who are able to see how, like you, who are just been able to kind of like be like, yeah, like with my project management, I get to actually utilize a lot of the skill sets that I really enjoy utilizing, with like about self-development and team building and helping people. And I really love that, because it took me a while to understand that for myself, to be like, oh, like I don't always have to be a coach in this way. I can use my coaching skills. If I hire people, I obviously should use my coaching skills to help the people I hire to do a good job for themselves, And so, yeah, I just want to say, I also really I kind of like the way you structured your life. It's like you have the 9-to-5, again, kind of going off of, because I read your end of the year recap, but I like that you have the job, and then you have these like other places where you get to try on different skill sets in different ways in your life. So it's cool, man. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I wanted to ask, like, I think you have an idea of the vision for the future. Maybe I'm just too future focused, but like, what is the 5-10 year vision for the future for Kenta? Maybe it's not as clear, but maybe it might just be more of an idea or a feeling, but what is in the future for you? What's in store?
I think there's a few like practical life things that I would like to happen, like just in terms of integrating to another country. It just takes time. Learning the language, getting settled into your own home. Like we would like to buy our own apartment, things like that. and move into kind of somewhere where we're like, we know we can be here for a while and start a family. But I think in terms of like projects and stuff, I would like to be at a place where a lot of the things I've been setting up for myself very, very patiently, and sometimes to my own judgment of how long it's taken, that these things come to fruition. So like getting to have a physical space, Studio Rana, with the different elements that I talked about earlier, getting to see movement design research be like a thriving, integrated part of my like creative business ecosystem, and maybe even take over as like my main income, and my coaching getting to be more of an exclusive thing, as in I just won't have as much time and capacity to work with people. Yeah. And I mean, I still want to keep moving, just like healthy. I just want to be in good community. I really want my work to continue to develop spiritually, and really like always like tying back my work into how I can give back to my community, whether through my presence or like financially, like funding different organizations or initiatives. Or honestly, I'd love to get to a place where like my businesses could create like little funds where artists can apply for money and be like, yo, go create that. You know, because we really undervalue artists and creatives in our current culture. Yeah, and just kind of getting to continue to integrate a lot of my ethical concepts around like money and, you know, yeah, like an anti-capitalist, like decolonial framework, you know. Yeah, like it took me a long time to understand, you know, capitalism does not equal money or marketplace. Like we can have a marketplace that does not like hoard money, centralize money, and value like capital as like the almighty God, you know? I would love to get to a place where, of course, as a society where we can like use money or exchange formats to like care for each other, you know, care for Earth. This is kind of like what I had written a little bit about. So, I mean, I'm just a little tiny node, like a speck in the dust of that. But yeah, 5-10 years, I'd love to get to a place where a lot more of my work is integrated into that, and that where I can like have material resources to distribute back to my community in a capacity that I just don't have right now as much, you know? Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Cool. What about you?
Oh, yeah. I think it's the same things that I've been doing, is kind of like you I've been planting these seeds and then just going to be watering it for the next 3, 4, 5 years, and just to be patient. I know I'm like on the right track. As you know, I'm more of a slow, risk averse, meticulous, long-term person. And so I know that some of these things will come to fruition in 5 years, but I know I can do it. And I know like historically looking back, like almost everything that I've put my mind to, I've manifested or achieved, which is, you know, great. And I'm celebrating that. But now it's just being patient and not being so attached to an outcome faster than I think faster than it will happen. Right. Yeah. And so just moving through life like that. So I think it's everything that I'm doing right now. Just add 5-10 years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's how I feel. And I mean, that's, you know, in a lot of ways, I feel very happy with where I am. It's just got to just keep, you know, getting out of my own way and taking those steps to like continue to develop it and get deeper and deeper into that.
Okay. I would like to move to rapid fire questions. Feel free to pass any of these. And then if you have any other lingering questions, we can also get to that as well, but I might jump around a bit. First question, billboard question. If you could put up a sign for millions of people to see, what would it say? Metaphorical, non-commercial.
Metaphorical, non-commercial, fart out loud more.
Okay. What does that mean to you?
I think people hold in their farts too much, and
like physically or spiritually.
Yeah, both, man. Yeah, I think it's both, man. Like I think we care too much about what other people think, so we try to hold our farts in, and like I think we should stop repressing ourselves and just let one rip more often. You know, if you're eating good, healthy gut foods like high fiber, your fart shouldn't smell that bad, anyways. Just like let it rip. You know, it's family. Come on.
Very insightful, very unique answer. I've never gotten that before. Very Kenta. Okay, next one. Self-inflicted wound. Do you have a story about something that's gone wrong and you can't blame anyone else because you did it to yourself?
I mean, I think like a lot of the reasons why some of like my projects have taken so long, especially like my product-based like movement design research, I think a lot of it is just me getting in my own way and overthinking, you know? And yeah, I think it's like I don't know, like self-inflicted, in that like I'm continuing to perpetuate the narratives that have hurt me in the past, and I continue to live through it. And it takes time to heal. do that, you know? But at the same time, the only person that is responsible for whether or not I take action towards what I want to do is me, you know? Yeah. Because I have the privilege, obviously, to say that. But yeah.
If you could redo one thing, what would you do differently? Not in the sense of I regret anything, but more just like as a thought experiment.
There's been times in the last couple of years where I've had conversations with people who kind of like made me really doubt my own philosophy and approach to how I want to be part of the world, and especially like in an impact level, like how I want to make a difference in the world. And I think because of my people pleasing tendencies that I'm still working through, like I've really given into that, and it took me really out of my rhythm and my pace of life. And on one end, it was great because it gave me a lot of time to reflect and try to understand their perspective. But I understand now, like I could have done that while also like continuing to like still choose to stay on my own path as well, you know? Like that, not every reflection has to like take you completely off the track. Like sometimes you can like just slow down and still be on the track a little bit more and then still consider and learn the other things. So in some ways I did do that, but I just feel like there's an opportunity where like I didn't have to go so off the pace, let's say.
I see.
Yeah.
In the last few years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has improved your life?
That we are all shaped by each other. Yeah. And that we all bear responsibility for, you know, like sometimes like we can feel like we're kind of like crazy. We're like, well, why am I thinking about this? It's like, yeah, but that's not you. That's your culmination of the society. Like we are a reflection of the village, the culture that we grew up in, you know? So it's not to say that we have to live by that, but it's also to give ourselves a little bit more compassion and love and be like, take a step back and start with like, where's the roots? Why do you believe this? Who gave you this ideas? You know, how has this been manufactured or produced or passed on to you and why? And just like that awareness helps me like be a little bit more critical. It's like a critical theory kind of thing, you know, it's like take a step back and look at the conditions that have brought about certain ideas in my life.
Next one, how do you define success?
These days, I feel like success is if you can just be like unapologetically and lovingly you. So yeah, so not like a performance, like an egotistical performance. Like I don't want to reward like sociopaths and stuff like that. But you know, if you can really find a practice to come back to something that feels like honest and truthful to you over and over again, I think that's like really, really, really hard for a lot of people in the world. And I think it's very successful. You know, so someone like you, like maybe it's a big practice for you too, but I'd be like, wow, that's success, you know? Yeah. Because everything else comes and goes, you know?
All right. Next one. We might have already covered this, but what's something you've been pondering a lot recently or think about often deeply?
Yeah, I think it's the attachment thing. Like the non-attachment.
Yeah. It's the root of everything.
Yeah.
Favorite hot take or something you think most people would not agree with?
I don't know, because I feel like I hang around people who agree with me. No.
Perfect. Your echo chamber.
Yes. No, I think I'm great. So, no, maybe...
You're so mainstream, Kenta.
I'm so mainstream. I mean, there's probably a lot of things, and some things maybe I should keep to myself and not on the podcast. But I think we should live in a world without borders. I think there's a possibility for a coexistence where we honor, like, that humans are migratory and... I mean, yeah, we also settle, but basically like nations and borders are like all made up. And I think I get that it's not a snap of a finger. We do it tomorrow. I get that there's a lot of steps that would need to happen, but I would love to believe in a version of our world where we don't need to divide each other with fake lines.
I like that a lot. Tangent. That's also the whole, I don't know how you feel about race and ethnicity, but I feel the same way when people talk about like race in that sense. And my thought is like, you know how race is just a social construct. And so we're like, oh, like, what is your race based on this phenotype? And I'm like, but that's all just made up. Like, yeah, there are cultures that we pass along, but it's hard to get into this, but it's like, let's say someone who looks phenotypically, let's say Caucasian or European or something like that, right? But they were born and raised in, let's say, Jamaica. I don't know, right? You can say their phenotype looks more Caucasian if you put that in sort of a bubble. But if they have been culturally, like their family, their friends, everything, and they've raised and they're purely Jamaican, then are they like, what race are they? Because it's such a construct that it doesn't matter what your phenotype is, you could still be a different culture, right?
Yeah.
That's what I think about when you say nations, right? Because nations are also just
Yeah.
made up.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of the things many things are constructs, right? And I think I just wish we lived in I hope we can move more and more towards realities of understanding that are far more nuanced. And I think through that nuance, we can like move towards like at least questioning the constructs as like more normally, that it becomes more normal to be like, what is gender? What is race? Why do we have borders? Like to a point where then hopefully some of those things start to dissipate and be like, yeah, I agree with you, right? Now we're in an echo chamber, but I'm like, yeah, like there are cultures that get passed down, like in lineages, and that gets passed down. Like it's not to take away any of those things. But yeah, I think about it a lot. There are people who are, who are like, even like they're ancestrally like from Sudan or something, but like they grew up in Japan, and like those people are like far more Japanese than me because I just didn't grow up in Japan.
That's what I mean? Exactly. It's like that sort of thing.
Yeah. And a really good one is like Korean people who are their ancestry is from Korea and they like grow up in Japan. You can't even tell the difference sometimes. I'm like, those people are way more Japanese than me. Not to take away the Koreanness, like of course they are still Korean, if that's how they feel. But yeah, I mean it is a construct, right? Yeah. So
I like that. Let's see. I think you would have a good answer for this because I don't really ask this one much, but what do you think are some of the differences between how you see yourself versus how others see you, if at all?
How I see myself versus how others see you. I think that others think about me more negatively than not even like than they do, but I just don't fundamentally think people think about you as much as one thinks people think about them. So
in a macro level, you don't think people think about yourself as much as you think they think about you.
Yeah, because we're all thinking about ourselves more.
Like, right.
Right. So it's not to say they're not thinking about you, and it's not to say sometimes people do project and like fixate, oh, this person really frustrates me. They're like, they're like the problem of my life right now. But like a lot of that it's in them. Like most things, like it's an experience of the self. So, like it's like that Evangelion thing, right? It's like there's a version of us. There's like multitudes of me. There's like me as I experience myself. There's even me as I think others experience of myself. There's a me that how you experience me. There's like there's like millions, like infinite versions of me. So it's like at some point that's also an attachment thing. So we can't be so attached to these concepts of ourselves.
Of course. So I agree with that. So now, is there actually a specific thing that you think how Kenta sees Kenta versus how other people see Kenta? Do you think there is or not? I'm just curious. Or do you think it's consistent?
No, I think there is. Because I think my understanding is what I think you think of me. You know what I mean? It's like we're playing telephone. I don't actually know what you think of me. You can try to articulate and communicate it to me, but the totality of what you actually think of me, I will never know.
Okay, so you chalk it up as I don't know how other people think of me. So therefore you can't say that is consistent with how you think of yourself.
Yeah, because it's also changing. And I think this is part of the dharmic traditions. I think also in yoga, but like Buddhism is like there at every moment, there's a new version of us infinitely over and over and over and over.
A new iteration. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't know.
Okay.
Like I'm a different person than an hour ago, right?
Right. Okay. All right. I like that answer. You didn't answer my question, but I like the answer. Okay. All right.
It's a wise man answer. I answer it with a non-answer.
It's like, look, I just wanted a fish and you gave me this fishing lesson. No, I wanted a fish from you. I didn't want to learn anything. What is one of the best or most worthwhile investments you've made in either time, money, energy, etc.?
That's a very hard one, but I think coaching actually. I think, as far as I can think now, I think any kind of like help from others, it doesn't have to be a coach. It could be a therapist. It could be a friend. It could be a mentor. It could be whatever, but just like someone who can help guide you, especially if it's like we live in a culture where we're not always have access to like elders. So it's like nice to have people who are able to, just like help like very lovingly and compassionately, like create space to guide you into whatever is in the muck of uncertainty you're moving through, Yeah, I think for me that it was a big change for me when I started working with coaches in the last, since 2019, essentially.
I like that. I vibe with that. Okay, yeah. I'll go to my last one for rapid fire, but do you have any favorite books, movies, videos, articles, media, or anything you share or recommend the most, if at all?
Yeah, I think like James Baldwin, people should read his work. I think people should read Frantz Fanon's work.
Frantz Fanon's an author?
Yeah, and he's a psychotherapist. Psychoanalyst. Yeah.
A psychoanalyst?
Yeah, I don't know. I think people should just read like books from revolutionaries and thinkers like bell hooks, and yeah. There's a book called Love and Rage that I read by Lama Rod, which was like really good. So there's like a lot of books that I think I could recommend. I'm reading a book right now by a guy named Lars Torkil. It's called The Slow Transition from Capitalism to Socialism, which is also pretty good. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I think people should read like books about like society and like critical thinking and how we can make change and stuff like that.
Yeah. I like it. That reminds me of my entire undergrad studying poli-sci is all these critical thinking thought leaders. I'm like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, because it's not about, it's like, you don't need to read it to try and buy into a dogma, right? Or like an ideology, but it's like, it helps you think. I think that's the thing that's really beautiful. Like it helps you try and understand like how society works. How do we think about these things? How do we be critical, even of the critical thinkers, So I think this is something that like we really need right now is like, how do we be honest, right? Lovingly honest with the society and with the conditions and with each other. And I think the right critical thinkers can help us learn how to think about these things. Yeah.
Oh, I now remember what I was going to say. But when you're talking about like nuance, how you think there should be more nuance in the world, I totally agree. And what I've come to the conclusion of, or at least my reflections, is that I think the reason why people don't implore more nuance is because they're so used to relying on these heuristics and generalizations as like rules of thumb or just how they operate in life, like less critically thinking, less nuance. And that's why we run into these problems of lack of understanding of each other and empathy and these sort of broad strokes, because it's a shortcut for our brain to understand the world, which I understand the sentiment. Like our brains were evolved to use these heuristics to navigate more successfully. But I think in this modern day and age, that is now a handicap because we're so anti-nuanced and it doesn't allow us to really understand and connect with people.
Yeah. One of the things that I often talk about with my wife is, and it's not like a moral judgment of good or bad on any particular person. I'm also part of this, but we are often so afraid of taking the hard route. To your point, like it's easier for our brains to just like go to the easy. That makes sense. Easier to take the easy route. But it's so like generalization and, we think about that also with movement. Like it's easier for people to take Ozempic. Some people need it. Like I get it if it's like you have an actual medical condition, but like for some people, I'll just take a diet pill or I'll just go get surgery. It's a shortcut instead of like understanding like, well, one, like putting the time and effort into if you really want to transform your body physically, but also like you can think about like, why do I feel like the need to transform myself in the first place? There's a lot of thought that can go into everything, but it's like easier to be like, well, I want to look like Kim Kardashian, so I'm going to get a butt lift. Or, okay, now actually it's no longer a butt lift. It's whatever, And I think it's the same with the way that we relate to each other, right? So that's why we live in this very blue versus red world when really like we have to take a step out and be like, don't, like I often find that if we just take a moment, like really listen to people, like there'll be disagreements and probably like many things that we don't like about each other just from the way we grew up. But there's also a lot of like overlaps, and I think that's where the nuance, but you need to be patient and it's hard because you have to like be emotionally patient. You have to be intellectually patient with each other. I know I'm not always the greatest at it. So yeah, it's just to reflect back. I really agree with you. Like so many of us take the easy route, which is the generalizations and the he said, she said, and the whatever. Yeah. Versus the hard route, which is like, it forces you to really like confront things, It sucks and it's hard.
Yeah. Most people aren't willing to put in the hard work, and understandably I get it, but it's like, you'll find yourself hitting a wall with that sort of thing if you don't put in the effort. So I totally agree.
Yeah.
Okay. That is all I have for rapid fire. You made it to the end. Congratulations. All I have left are ending questions. Yeah, but I don't know if you had any other lingering thoughts you wanted to throw out there before we wrap up.
No, we should definitely hop on a call and have a little bit more of a catch-up call in a couple weeks and just get to hear a little bit more. I'm also just like realizing that it's past 11 and I'm a little tired now. So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But
thanks for staying on.
No, I really enjoyed it, and I wish I could talk more. I'm also just really mindful of the fact I'm like, I don't know how you're going to edit down a 2-hour podcast, but I trust
it probably won't. It'll only be like 3 minutes editing tops. It's going to be mostly just this.
Yeah. So people just like sit and listen to us.
They'll sit and listen. Yeah. If you made it this far, congratulations. You've listened to us rambling. Hopefully you enjoyed it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm ready for the last questions.
Yeah. And then we'll definitely catch up too. We'll throw something on calendars, whatever makes sense. Yeah. So ending questions, we always end with gratitude. Shout out to my mom. What are you grateful for, Kenta?
Yeah, like I said a few times, I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for all the people in my village that have helped me be who I am today, beyond name. Yeah, I'm just really grateful for my body. I'm grateful for my partner, grateful for my family. Yeah, I feel very grateful. There's so much bad shit going on in the world, but I feel very privileged with where I am in my life. And I also feel, very grateful for this world that we live in, the little G God, I guess one could say. It's a little bit of a watery answer, but I just feel very grateful for my life and for everybody in it.
I love that. All right, second to last question. Any final ask from the audience or any final takeaways you'd like them to have from our conversation?
I mean, shit, if you made it this far, I don't know. I think any takeaways, I think it's interesting if you have a moment to examine like where your thoughts, like where do your thoughts root from? I think is a very interesting practice. Whatever that thought is, like where does that come from? Is it somebody's voice, like from the past? Is it your own voice from an experience? Is it something you learned through society, through culture? I would just get curious, like, where do my thoughts come from?
I love that. That's actually very good. I'm going to take that one for myself.
Cool.
All right. So last question. I'll link everything that you've sent me, your website, social media, but if people want to connect or see what you're up to, where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram, which is Kenta Thomas. I have a newsletter, or I have a website, which is kentathomasnaoi.com. And then if you go on that, you can find my newsletter, which is probably where I will direct most of my attention to more and more, because I'm slowly trying to move away from social media more or less, or at least not be as reliant on it. So I would say those are the 3 places, like website, newsletter, and then I am still on Instagram, and I probably will post a little bit more still, so you can find me there.
Sweet. Cool. Awesome. Well,
cool. Thank you so much for having me and for having a more than 2-hour conversation at this point.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it for the extra time. I know I was trying to keep it tight, but I guess we both had fun, so whatever.
Lots of fun.
I'll wrap it up now. So first off, thank you, Kenta, for being here. I really appreciate it. Again, I think it's always nice to reconnect with someone like you who's very grounding, also from my past. And so I think reconnecting with you helps to reconnect with my past self. And then just hearing your experiences firsthand, as opposed to just over social media, has been such a joy for me. So I'm definitely going to listen to this episode again for my own benefit and pleasure. So thank you for that. And then for the audience, thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate it. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe, etc. 5 stars, whatever platform. Leave Kenta love in the comments below. Shout outs. And also a reminder to always be kind to other people, especially yourself. You never know what people are going through. And a reminder that you can always learn something from someone if you take the time to listen. So thanks for being here.
I love that. Thank you.